Friends, on this auspicious day, let me first begin by extending my good wishes to all of you for the year ahead. It is indeed a great pleasure to join you at the founding day of the Thuglak magazine. And I say this and do so for 4 reasons. 1, the Modi government believes that foreign policy should not be debated by just limited circles in New Delhi. In a globalized era, everybody is a stakeholder with an interest in the world outside. 2, though the world may look a little different depending on location, there is still a national perspective that is primary. The entire country must therefore have a full understanding of our national interests and our national aspirations. And I'm here to share that with you all. 3, these are moments when we have a unique opportunity to engage the world more closely. I speak here of our G20 presidency that will witness events in more than 50 cities across India, including in this city. We certainly expect that it would catalyze greater interest in India and the world about each other. So this is a good time to focus on global perceptions. The 4th, of course, is the prestige of Thuglak and the stature of Gurumurti ji. I can only say, and you saw that from the tweets, that an invitation from him can only have one response. So I felt that this occasion is best utilized to discuss a question that should be on the minds of all right-thinking citizens. Why India matters to the world. In a common sense way, India has always mattered. After all, such a large landmass with so many people and that rich a history and culture will naturally occupy the world's mind space. The question really is of the nature of this relevance. How much of it is passive and how much active? Now, India can matter by just being there as a marketplace, as a contested ground, as a resource for others, or as a platform. And it did just that during the colonial times. But India can matter too through the power of its ideas and actions, as an engine of the global economy, as a hub of innovations, or a democracy that delivers. That is the course of ambition and destiny, one that we are taking more recently. The crucial place that India has long occupied in global thinking is manifest in the obsessive search for trade routes to India. Using India as an effective base, Europe was able to dominate the rest of Asia. In fact, even China's fate in the 19th century was very much shaped by the outcomes in India. Not surprisingly, this centrality of India worked the other way around as well. Its independence set in motion a larger decolonization process that became the basis for the contemporary global order. Decades later, India's economic progress has contributed to a rebalancing and multipolarity that is still unfolding. Part of why India counts is obvious. For a start, it represents a sixth of humanity, so its successes and shortcomings have clear global implications. But for its partition, India and not China would have been the largest society in living memory, closer to a fifth of the world. The case for India is, however, more than just one of statistics. For it is among the few civilizational states that has survived the ravages of history. Simply put, there is not just a scale and history about India, but an exceptionalism that makes it matter. Now, societies can be relevant as a playing field for others, or they can themselves be a player. The progress of our times is the change from one to the other. New activities and energies have emerged from the freedom of colonized nations that were taken forward by their comparative advantage. Large nations in particular started regaining their natural weight in the calculations of others. This could be from a set of capabilities, a reservoir of resources, the quality of talent, the importance of location, but most of all, from national will and leadership. It is the entirety of this matrix that has shaped the rise of India. As we now mark 75 years of independence, Indians should examine our prospects against the global context that has been equally transformational. The world offers vastly more opportunities, but those are embedded with new challenges and responsibilities. India matters because these cannot be separated, and India counts on both scores. While size and population are obvious indices of a nation's potential, neither by themselves are self-fulfilling. At the core of global rebalancing has been the revival of China, India, and others in the South who have made their long-standing characteristics count more through the process of national revival. A key factor is the pace and nature of development, especially making it human-centric. In this respect, recent happenings are a source of optimism for our country. Since 2014, the commitment to transform society has become increasingly holistic and increasingly effective. It begins at better health and immunization, reducing gender gaps, expanding educational access and coverage, and promoting skills to foster talent and innovation, making it easier to do business, and creating greater employment opportunities. The resulting inclusive growth will naturally contribute to strengthening capabilities and expanding the marketplace. But just as notable will be the impact of all of this on the global workplace, and that really matters to the world. Because a knowledge economy really puts a premium on quality human resources, and that in turn mandates realizing the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. It is clear from the national campaigns initiated by the Modi government that these 17 SDG goals defined by the United Nations are indeed among the government's key objectives even during the COVID period. And our delivery has been particularly effective as a result of the digital backbone that has been constructed. So take the Jam Trinity that has empowered millions of vulnerable by providing banking and digital services. For that matter, the expanding health coverage that demonstrates that this need not be a prerogative of the developed, or the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao scheme for girls' education that has had such a sweeping societal implication. And indeed, the Jal Shakti mission to bring tap water to all homes, the Digital India network that has brought masses online, and the Ujjwala program to replace burning firewood with cooking gas. Why India matters is because its record and its progress would determine the global success in meeting SDG targets. During the COVID period, India impacted global consciousness in very different and diverse ways. Normally, we would have all been at the tail end of a global queue for new medicines. This time around, India was not only a successful producer of vaccines for itself and for the world, but an inventor of vaccine to boot. Now, it's a different matter that some people try to run it down, but of course, the CoWIN platform, which enabled us to execute a 2 billion plus shot in the arm operation so smoothly. You know, what a contrast it was with many other parts of the world. Our solidarity was also expressed in providing vaccines to more than 100 partners worldwide and medicines to more than 150 nations, including developed nations. There were other developments in the same period that were equally compelling. These were developments at home, but sometimes because they are so close to home, we tend to take it for granted. That we could give food support to 800 million people during COVID. 800 million people, that is twice the population of the European Union. And financial assistance to over 400 million people. And that too without leakage. That is a huge statement about this India. The world is also watching today how our health, housing, microcredit, farmer support programs, all these are moving forward. Now you might wonder why the foreign minister is talking about all this. But I am, because in my travels abroad, I've heard not just warm words for our generosity on medicines, on drugs, on other support, but interest and admiration about our technology-enabled governance. Many other leaders, many of my counterparts, have told me they also have a leakage problem. Now, since there's only one Modi, I can tell them that you have to find the solution through technology. So India matters because India is today perceived as an exemplar by the global South. The value of India's human potential has also not always been recognized, even by many of us in the country itself. There are currently more than 32 million Indians and persons of Indian origin who are living and working abroad. So we have, in a sense, the largest diaspora in the world. Now, these could be from larger or smaller nations, nearer or distant ones, historical emigration or recent movements. But the pervasive spread of the Indian community actually has been a natural accompaniment of globalization. But rather than leave them to their fate in difficult times, there is now a policy to bond, motivate, and safeguard them. It could be the Madison Square Garden event, the Vande Bharat mission during the COVID, or the Operation Ganga during the Ukraine conflict. The underlying feeling, the underlying sentiment is the same. Now, as the world moves towards higher skills and for the developed world, tougher demographics, India is itself improving the quality of its human resources. This demand-supply fit has an increasingly powerful logic today for the global economy. Recent agreements that we have done with Germany, Japan, UK, Portugal are harbingers of change. India matters because with each passing year, our human resources will be a bigger factor in the global workplace. large nations in particular require deep strengths. If there has been a major shortcoming in our post-1992 performance, and we should be open about our shortcomings, it has been in the inadequacy of that level of capabilities. Contentment with corporate profitability overrode any commitment to create resilient domestic supply chains. That growth was insufficiently reflected in the expansion of employment should have itself been a warning signal to all of us. And remember, reform itself was conceptualized in narrow terms to actually serve a limited constituency. Today, the nation has shifted gears to upgrade the human resources chain as well as step up manufacturing and innovation, and thereby a new vista of prospects has opened up. The manufacturing of Apple products in our country is actually a very powerful statement in that regard. In different ways, our startups, the rollout of 5G technology when it happens, our space and drones capability, all these are illustrations of the change that Indian manufacturing, Indian innovation, Indian talent is going through. So India will matter only if it makes a greater contribution to global production and services. But fortunately, we are now on our way. National well-being has many facets, but national security is without question its basic foundation. All countries are tested in this regard, but we perhaps have had more than our fair share. These have ranged from insurgencies and wars to cross-border terrorism, especially terrorism. Our long-suffering approach had, however, created the danger of normalizing terrorism. That is why Uri and Balakot sent a much-needed message. On the northern borders, China is today seeking to change the status quo by bringing large forces in violation of our agreements. Despite the COVID, remember this happened in May of 2020, despite the COVID, our counter response was strong and firm. These troops deployed in the thousands safeguard our frontiers in the most extreme terrain and the harshest weather. And it continues to this day. So India matters because the world sees that this is a nation that will not be coerced. It will not be coerced by anybody, and that it will do what it takes to ensure its national security. In India's case, geography has added to the case made by history of its relevance. The Indian peninsula has a visible centrality to the ocean that is named after it. There is a continental dimension as well. Without its active participation, no Trans-Asia connectivity initiative can really take off. The Indian Ocean is poised to assume today even greater geopolitical significance. How well India leverages its location is a considerable part of its relevance to the world. The more it influences, the more it participates, the more its global stock will rise. And if India's prosperity and progress serve as a larger lifting tide for the entire subcontinent, then this would be even more consequential. History may be a mixed blessing for most states, but making the most of it is nevertheless still a policy compulsion. In India's case, its 1947 partition not only reduced its stature, but also cut us off from proximate regions where we long enjoyed respect and influence. The graduation in recent years from look east into act east policy highlights the seriousness of connectivity and security interests in Southeast Asia. But it is also a very important step towards defining what is an extended neighborhood of India. In the last 8 years, a parallel effort has also been made with the Gulf to rebuild other long-standing associations that have been disrupted. After decades of limiting these ties to energy and emigration, India is working at creating a full spectrum relationship. Stronger economic linkages are being buttressed by closer security coordination. A third initiative is aimed at Central Asia. Here, we have to overcome the impediment of connectivity. I think you all know what I mean. And because that is really the obstacle to leveraging what is such a visible cultural affinity for us. With regard to the sea space to our south, the 2015 Sagar Doctrine, which was announced by Prime Minister Modi, initiated a reach out to these islands whose future is so closely intertwined with India. Returning to history and recognizing our extended neighborhoods is another reason why India matters. Political constraints can not only limit the pursuit of national interest, but it can also sadly shrink our horizons. But in a more confident India, it is only natural that cultural legacies should once again start to regain salience. Southeast Asia, for example, offers a rich shared heritage visible in significant monuments and living arts. Consequently, a new archaeological find in Mison in Vietnam or a shared preservation project in Ta Prohm in Cambodia, these have a resonance for the entire region. If you look further towards the east, the extent of Indian cultural reach actually goes all the way up to Korea. The revival of Ayodhya clearly struck a strong cultural chord in that society. In the West, today, effervescent trading cultures have started to pick up on our old comfort to build new links. The construction of a temple in Abu Dhabi and hopefully one in Bahrain soon, these are symbolic of a time-honored relationship with the Indian society. The northward connection to the Eurasian landmass reflects the spread of Buddhism with its own intellectual, spiritual, and aesthetic messages. This legacy endures, and we are committed to endeavors that would make them flower again. Our heritage preservation efforts in Ganden Monastery in Mongolia is a very good example of what we are trying to do in this regard. So believe me, India truly matters when it reclaims history. But you don't have to go back into the recesses of time. Even contemporary experiences offer us opportunities. The Indian contribution to the 2 world wars was very significant. In fact, to a point where it decided the outcome in some theaters. Over 1 million Indians participated in the First World War, and the bicycle troops of the Somme and the turbaned Indian troops entering the Jaffa Gate in Jerusalem. These were the most iconic images of that era. But it took Prime Minister Modi's presence at memorials like Neuve Chapelle and Haifa for the public consciousness about them to grow. The Second World War, in fact, saw 2.5 million Indians take up arms and make a critical contribution both on the battlefield and through logistical efforts. When the Indian military contingent marched through the Red Square in June 2020, this was a reminder of India's contribution to the eventual victory. The stabilizing role that the Indian military played in the aftermath of the war is no less significant. It is this tradition of global service that has since become the foundation for the country to emerge as a leader in United Nations peacekeeping operations. From that, India is now evolving into an effective first responder in regional crisis situations. India matters because it can make a real difference to global security. Because of its very uniqueness, India cannot be an easily replicable model, but it does offer experiences for others. The world recognizes both the singularity and the relevance of India's progress. So put aside those who are steeped in political polemics, the rest of the world gets it, that a civilizational state is rising again, that it will display its own personality, that it will speak and think for itself, and that it will radiate how it is rooted in its own culture. The more confident India is, the more expressive it will be on the world stage. Only then can it overcome the image of being a poor cousin mired in its colonial history. In this endeavor, India is uniquely positioned to bridge modernity and tradition. It will be more impactful by embracing its heritage, not by diminishing it. A combination of cultural beliefs and modernizing agenda help address many current dilemmas. Its historical characteristics are a source of strength once they are approached with confidence. For example, the appreciation of pluralism is as much a derivative of long-standing social practices as of a constitutional mandate. Similarly, stronger nationalism at home coexists traditionally with an enthusiastic internationalism abroad. In fact, Gurumurthy ji made that point speaking about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So remember, rising India wants to engage the world more, not less. India matters when it is more authentically India. Given its growing political stature and economic abilities, India has to credibly also address the expectation that the world has of it. Neighbors would naturally like India to modulate its presence in their country as per their convenience. From the Indian perspective, it is not always easy to get the balance right. Doing too much looks too intrusive. Showing reticence can be taken as indifference, if not weakness. The optimal Indian strategy is therefore to rise above the day-to-day developments and create structural linkages. Those ingredients of connectivity, commerce, and contacts are the core of our neighborhood-first approach. As its profile rises, Indian policymakers are also discovering that expectations are not confined to their immediate vicinity. The global south watches India's positions and its performance very carefully, drawing conclusions from both. In the last decade, a long tradition of South-South cooperation has developed into something much deeper. It captures domains where Indian capabilities have a direct relevance for the aspirations of Africa, of Latin America, and of Asia. Some of that has taken the form of development projects in energy, digital, manufacturing, education, or connectivity. that has been supported by exchanges of experience and best practices, including training. It is not just the immediate benefits of these endeavors that matter. They eventually help create more options. Especially since 2014, India has taken active steps to empower the global south. Lines of credit and grant assistance have been vehicles to execute socio-economic projects of varying levels in as many as 78 countries across the world. Unlike initiatives that have been driven by some others for extractive objectives, India's efforts are aimed at ensuring more self-reliance. And believe me, the partners really appreciate that. India matters to the global south because there are very few others who have taken such an approach. India's political choices have also enabled democratic values to achieve a universal status. In fact, it is India which has made a difference, not just by building a modern democratic polity under testing economic conditions, but by actually drawing on its age-old heritage of pluralism as a way of doing so. And that is why today we can lay claim to being mother of democracy. Furthermore, in contrast to challenges that others faced in recent years, India's democratic delivery has only become stronger. Whether it is in terms of electoral participation, broadening of political representation, or even credibility of polls, the effectiveness of the democratic process is, if anything, more and more apparent. India's working democracy is an important reason for the world why India matters. How then is India faring on the world stage? The change of global power distribution has many facets and expressions. It may be visible in economic activities, trade and investment figures, technological capabilities, or market shares. But it is also evident in the key debates of the day. Debates about climate change, about terrorism, black money, taxation, or even about pandemics. Last year, in fact, we saw an intense debate about energy, food, and fertilizer security, again, something which Gurmurthy ji referred to. Now, India has emerged in all these issues as a much more influential voice, a voice that cannot be ignored anymore in any conversation across the world. Not just that, India has also been an energetic source of ideas and initiatives. Think about it. There was the International Solar Alliance, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. These were the two big initiatives in the field of climate action. And now, in fact, last year, Prime Minister has proposed the Mission Life, which is how do we get the entire world to adopt an environmentally friendly lifestyle. And this year, again, at India's initiative, the UN has declared it as the International Year of Millets. Then there is the question of shouldering responsibilities. Responsibilities that may go beyond our shores. The record of addressing human and disaster situations since 2014 has clearly established India as a first responder in the Indian Ocean and its littorals. And I want, since I am here in Chennai, I want people to remember something which happened almost 2 decades ago, the 2004 tsunami. At the time of the 2004 tsunami, a lot of the Indian Ocean countries waited for help to come from elsewhere. Yes, India did its part, but the bulk of the efforts were American, they were Japanese, they were European. Today, actually, in the Indian Ocean, India is actually the first and primary responder, whether it is in Sri Lanka, Maldives, Myanmar, Mozambique, in fact, as far away as Fiji. So, I think it's important for the citizens of India to appreciate that what India is saying, doing, and shaping today is a very powerful reason why it matters in the calculations of others. This image has also been sharpened by the independence of thought and action that India has displayed during the course of its ongoing rise. Our considered stance on the Ukraine conflict is a recent example. The fundamental goal is to maximize freedom of choice. At times it is done by keeping a distance. At times it is done by voicing an opinion, as you saw. But on occasion, it is also served by working with others on specific issues and designated theatres. After all, why should we not take advantage of convergences with other powers to advance our own objectives? Joining and then taking forward the Quad is a very relevant example, because this has been one very important diplomatic, I would say, initiative which has gathered momentum in the last 3 or 4 years. And here, it is very equally important not to allow other nations a veto on our choices and our thinking. The same willingness to work with other nations is also on display where this group called I2U2 is concerned. This is in West Asia, with Israel, with the United Arab Emirates, and with the United States. India today matters because our diplomacy is keeping pace with the changing world, and because the Modi government is prepared to take bold steps that further India's rise. This then brings us to increase, the issue of how to increase the weight and stature of India in international affairs. A nation that sets its house in order clearly counts for more in a global discourse. Now, some of that obviously pertains to the quality of governance. Some of it pertains to the development of capabilities. Progress in addressing long-standing vulnerabilities, such as in Jammu and Kashmir, is naturally welcome. Where our periphery is concerned, stronger structural linkages expand the space for India's activities. The extended neighborhoods that represent the next circle in all directions, including the maritime one, also need sustained attention. With the rest of the world, engaging all the major powers gives India the most advantage. At the same time, establishing a footprint in regions that may be more distant, less historically familiar to us, is equally important. The bottom line today is that India has finally broken out of the box that its competitors helped to devise. A 360-degree outlook under the Modi government is one more reason why India matters. The direction of world politics also has a bearing on how India is perceived by the international community. We have a unique ability to bridge both the North-South divide and the East-West one. This has given us a particular value as we take over the G20 presidency. But if you look at other situations, other challenges, for example, in a more sensitive post-COVID environment, we have a great potential as a trusted source of technology. When it comes to diversifying production and supply chains, we could also be the beneficiary of the phenomenon of what today is called friendshoring. On the health front, our credentials, which were magnified during the COVID as the pharmacy of the world, have clearly been strengthened. Obviously, we have to do our part in terms of the infrastructure, the policies, the practices to encourage the world to rely more on India. As an open society and a market economy with such a large reservoir of talent, India can add to the global engines of growth. At a time when the de-risking of the global economy is so important, this really matters. That India matters and will matter more with the passage of time can be convincingly asserted. Like so many other developments in politics and history, it must never be taken as a predestined. There will always be doubters amongst us who cannot believe that our nation can even dare to think big. There are vested interests too, who will masquerade as political correctness and global consensus. We have seen for too long attempts to distance us from our history, from our traditions, and from our culture. At the end of the day, much will ride on our national unity and our collective purpose. Being a serious global player requires ambition and strategy to be backed by initiative, perseverance, and energy. Our own people and leadership must embrace their destiny to realize their aspirations. Keeping the faith and getting down to work are good ways to demonstrate that. How then does India look to the world today? It is among the few large economies with a robust recovery. We are the fifth in the world today, likely to be the third by the end of the decade, maybe even sooner. We are a polity that over the last 8 years have shown the will to take tough decisions and embark on serious reforms. We are taking big strides on human-centric development, on digital public goods, on green growth. India has stayed strong during the COVID storm and even gone out to help others. When our national security has been challenged, we have stood our ground and stood our ground very firmly. Breaking from the past, we are showing zero tolerance for terrorism. This is an India that knows how to take care of its own people. How to take care of its own people at home and how to take care of its people abroad as well. This new India shapes the global agenda and influences its outcomes. Today, it is this India which has the vision, the leadership, the willpower, and as you can see over the last 8 years, the record. This is the India that the world sees, and that is why, in the eyes of the world, this is an India that matters more and more. So thank you very much for your attention. Namaskar.